Howdy, howdy, everyone. It is time for an interview with the art director of Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, and of course the ever so famous creator of Spawn, and one of the amazing illustrators of the Amazing Spider-Man. I've read his comics forever. It is Todd McFarlane. Hooray! Hello, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing out there today?
Amazingly, having an extremely fun time ripping things apart and looking around the very beautifully decorated world of Amalur. Tell us a little bit about your involvement with the project. I mean, you have the label of art director, but for anyone who's unfamiliar with what that would mean for a game company, if you could just tell us a little bit about that experience for you.
Well, mine might have been slightly different than others. So
Yeah.
the way that it worked for me was, and we'll go back sort of to the beginning of it. I get a phone call from Kurt Schillen. Kurt and I knew each other from when he played here in Phoenix. That's where you're calling right now. I live in Phoenix, Arizona area, and he was playing for the Diamondbacks, and we sort of bumped into each other from time to time. Anyway, he'd moved on to Boston by this point, and he gives me a phone call, and R.A. Salvatore at the same time, and says, we want you guys to fly out to Kansas City. I've got an idea I want to pitch to you. And the idea was, I've got to start thinking about my athletic career being over. I want to start a video game company, but I don't want to start it after I retire. I want it to be waiting for me. So I need somebody to go and tell a story and somebody else to come in and help sort of guide the art. Now, for me, I didn't want to come in strictly as a sort of concept artist, if you will, right?
Yeah.
There were plenty of them. And so I said, hey, Kurt, I've sort of been on the other side of somebody licensing my character. So here, if you let me have control over character designs and weapons, sound effects,
Really?
environment.
Sound effects?
Yeah, lighting, architecture, animation. I mean, literally anything you're going to see with your eyes, right? I mean, because that's the game. People don't look at it as a little compartment of visual art. They just sort of go, the game is what they see with their eyes and what they hear with their ears. You let me sort of have control over all of that, basically the art, and I'll jump on board. And he said yes. And so, all of a sudden, each one of those areas, I had, a department that we worked with, and we began our adventure first on the MMO, and then which we continue to still develop, and then eventually we jumped on and did a sort of a second tracking of, we had the MMO still developing, and then we went to the game that you guys now have that is called Reckoning, and I do most of the art probably by video conferencing, and sometimes I'll fly into the studios.
Well, I immediately want to follow up on one of the things you said, which is control over the sound design, because I like that idea that everything, or some of the sound effects, I like that idea of it's not just guy does his segment, another guy does his segment, another guy does his segment, and they all sort of come together.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that's really interesting. Because in particular, the ice staff with the like the final sound effect, I just did it kind of in air like 10 times in a row just for the sound of it.
Right.
I find that
Well, let's talk about it, because what ends up happening is that if you isolate all the pieces, everybody in that sort of art department thinks they have to carry the load, right?
Yeah.
So when we first started, we wanted obviously to try and see if we could raise the bar in RPG games. So the conversation went. We had a couple big ones. One was, number one, let's talk about all the things that people do in video games and RPGs that are done very well. Let's put them up on our list and make sure we continue to do good things like that. Then we had the conversation of, well, what do we think that they should have done better, or we wish that they had done better? So we made our wish list, and we put it up there. But again, as I was talking to each one of the different departments, I go, look at, I have 15 different groups of people doing art.
Yeah.
So if I can get each one of you guys to raise the bar this much, which is basically 1%, every one of you guys give me 1% better than it's out in the marketplace, I'll then get 1% times 15. And all of a sudden, when I glue it all together, then the 15% will become a little more noticeable than any one sort of area trying to do it. And obviously, the sound going. Look at, if you've got a guy, and let's just talk about animation first. If you've got a guy animating and gets hit, he goes like this, boom. Okay, that's not bad, right?
Yeah.
Boom, it's not bad. But if you're going to hit a guy, then what you want to do is not only do you want the head to go, but you want the chest to cave and you want the hands to fly out. So what should happen is when you give me that same punch, instead of going here, it's okay. It should be here, and then I should be going like this, and it should be big, right?
Yeah.
So it's still the same hit, but now my whole body, you can't see it. I get back, but it was all Broadway acting.
Yeah.
Okay, now if I'm overacting the Broadway, then the sound should be consistent with that. Or like you're saying with some of the weapons, if they're doing these big spell casts or they've got a big weapon, bam, and they're dropping it down hard, then if we're going to sell it in terms of the big weapon, we're going to sell it with the cool animation, and we're going to sell it with all the light, right? Because again, there's an impact light. Then damn it, the sound better be there. Why? Because at the end, the gamer is only going to see it all together, and that's what they're going to react to, not any one piece. So they all have to sort of go in concert. And once they sort of saw that again, it wasn't any one particular area that had to sort of make the game or break the game, then everybody started having fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, I immediately noticed the feel really come out with the Quake spell that Kurt brought up earlier on, and I was talking how that was like a lot of fun, but especially like the really ultra dramatic pose and like the huge surge down. I remember Kurt was saying that you had a lot of fun with that animation specifically as well.
Yeah. Well, again, I come from the comic book world, and what we do, we don't have the luxury of things moving, right?
Yeah.
So for the most part, there's a lot of melodramatic, sort of frames that we have to put in the comic book.
Frames.
Yeah. So and because it's comic books, most people are, there's a lot of peacock sort of, looking big and looking good, right? And so when we were talking to the animators, I go, look, guys, there's a couple things I'm looking for. One is subtlety, right? So again, the arm turns a certain way when you go like this. I go, we have to get some of that in there, just so it feels like these are real characters. And then the other one is the other extreme, which is then if we're going to then go and do something big, then damn it, do it as big as you can. Again, if we're going to kill people, then why don't we kill people the best in the business? Why not? Well, I mean, we got to spend the time anyways. Why don't we make it big and giant and dramatic, and they come and don't come here, come over the head. So I remember some of the early days, they were showing me some of the animation, like with the swords and stuff like that. And I could tell that either A, they hadn't videotaped themselves, they hadn't watched somebody do it, or two, they were using balsa wood as their weapon.
They had to set it into the opponent's throat and sort of push it in there.
So I told them, I go, put down the balsa wood, go to the Home Depot, get 2 big heavy pieces of rebar that weigh about 45 pounds and do the exact same motion. And what you're going to find out is your body shifts slightly different when you have 40 pounds over your shoulder than when you've got a piece of balsa wood, right? And as an athlete, I understand sort of torque and dynamics of bodies, right? And again, the comic book's doing dramatic posing. So I go, come on, guys, if we're going to do it, then let's just, like I said, it's big Broadway. It's a big Broadway play here. Let's just make it sing to everybody, even the people in the back row.
Yeah, I specifically felt that weight a lot with just the very first hammer that you get, where it's just throwing it down with that huge, you're lugging it along. And another thing you talked about was that you come from the comic book world, so I kind of have like a two-phase question. One is what your experience was transitioning from comic book to just motion. Was it natural? Were there gaps? And also, well, I guess I'll just ask that first part first.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, it's not really a big deal because I remember I had sort of worked in animation. I'd done music videos, dealt with the movies and things like that. So I mean, I'd had the luxury of having sound and people moving around and whatever else. What usually happens, and again, it's sort of interesting because Kurt, even on the very first time that we were in a room together, and he was pitching it, was going, Todd, now I know your work and I like it and we're good pals, but I don't want everything to be sort of dark and morose, right? And I think he was sort of aware of what I'd been doing on Spawn, and it's sort of amusing to a guy like me that if you go to an athlete that's very coordinated and you give him a tennis racket and tell him how to play tennis, he's actually pretty good at it, right?
Yeah.
So and then if you give him a bowling ball and you go, here's how bowling works, And then if you say, here's how basketball works, a very talented athlete can kind of do pretty well in every one of those, sort of adventures and disciplines of sport.
Yeah.
You know what? My coordination is art, right? So Kurt, you want cute? I'll show you the pictures I can draw of bunnies. I can do fruit baskets if you want. I mean, the only reason I happen to do
love a
dark
bunny holding a fruit basket.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've done them. What are you talking about? I've done them. I just happen to draw a spawn in a certain style because that's what it calls for. But it doesn't mean that's the only artistic sport I can play.
Yeah, yeah.
You tell me now that this there's a different set of rules. Let's go. It's still art, right? I mean, you're still just trying to do big, dynamic, fun, entertaining stuff, which is what everything I've done with, animation, TV, and comic book and video games, even the toys, right? Even if you've seen some of the toys we do,
Oh, yes.
they're, the sports and stuff like that, or the monsters, is big, sort of crazy posing on it, right? I mean, it's still all body language. So I go, don't worry about this one. As long as the IT people can make it work, then I'm going to make sure that the animation people can sort of get it in to the game, and we'll just have fun with it, like you were saying.
Well, I mean, the continuation second part of that question is I'm wondering if there was, I guess what the experience is like taking a linear medium, like taking all the art that you've done and putting it into an interactive medium. There's a lot of really sort of, for a gamer, intuitive switches, where I hit twice and then instantly my shield comes out within a frame or two. Totally unnatural for real world. What were some of those, like, interesting struggles or challenges, or were there any, or did it still feel the same sort of natural way that you were talking about?
No, well, look, any game you play where you got to push buttons, you start having debates, right?
Yeah.
Again, how simple, elaborate, crazy do you want to make all this stuff? The determination was made fairly early on that we wanted to do some big stuff, right? We wanted the action. The action, we wanted to sort of upgrade what RPGs are used to in terms of the action, whatever else. But at the same time, we didn't want people to get frustrated that the action was complicated, that there was a big, heavy combo.
Yeah.
You had to do heavy combos. So we were trying to figure out, and the IT people the tech people were way smarter on all of this. We just had the theory about it. How do we do big visual stuff, but it not frustrate and complicate the gameplay? And they were able to figure it out. Again, I don't know how. You have to talk to them. They're smart. That they just go, no. If you just do like A, B, nothing sort of that complicated, you're still going to get a big move. And depending on how fast you do that, then it will change and alter the way that the play will be. And you don't have to sort of like memorize 20 different moves. And why? Because if people want really a true action game, then why wouldn't they just go and buy one, right? I mean, why wouldn't they just go buy a combat game and stay away from this? So what we were doing is saying, no, we're building an RPG game for people who actually like those kinds of games. And there's going to be action because there's action in all of them. But when you get to the action, wow, hopefully, wow, as I kept saying, let World of Warcraft have the wow, we wanted the whoa, so I wanted people to play it and they go, whoa, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
You're just saying with the ice thing, and they turn to their friend and they go, Bobby, you just see what we just saw? Like, whoa, dude, that's cool. And if we could just do that 15 or 20 times throughout the course of the game, then to some extent we were succeeding in that wish list that we had put up at on opening day, basically, when we had everybody sitting in the room.
Yeah, I definitely felt that a lot of times, even when there was nothing particularly epic designed in front of me, but like, for instance, when I picked up the ice staff and I just whacked a couple of times, that nice ripply icy thing, I was like, God, I'm just going to sit here and wail on this tree for the next 5 minutes. That is so great.
Well, even I think, again, we talked about when you're spell casting, right? There's a bit of a ballet into spell casting.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't want your guy to just go, boom, I got you with my lasers, right? There has to be sort of this, almost ninja-like, sort of Asian, Tai Chi that you do. Now this looks good. But if you slow it and then go fast, which isn't going to catch very well on Skype, and then
Look perfect.
then the guys who then come in and put the light trails, right? And the light trails, I was saying, I need them to feel like they're characters in and of themselves, right? So we talked about, there's actually, as weird as it is, there's a competition in the Olympics where the ladies dance and they've got these little sticks and they got ribbons on them,
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
and they go, and the ribbons are always dancing around it, right? So we wanted to have that it just felt like whenever they were doing like even sort of some simple spell casting, that even if their hand went like this, besides the glow of it would sort of build and it would get hotter and then cooler and then dive off, that those tendrils felt like they were alive as they were dancing around the hand. So why? Because then it wasn't all up to the animators. Remember, I was saying, everybody give me 1%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It wasn't then up to the animators then to have to do some big grand move. They could actually go wham, and if the guys that were the group that was doing the spell casting and the lighting was doing their job, then all of a sudden it would look 5 times better because the guy just waved his arm, but this big sort of magical spell came around, and the combination of it works in the game because again, the gamer isn't separating those different pieces. And then, like I said, you add the sound that goes with it, the thunder claps as it hits, and
Yeah.
all the other stuff, and all of a sudden you can sell it.
And I mean, I will admit the animation and all the just even when I have no clue what I want to be doing and I'm hitting the wrong buttons, it still feels fluid. I cannot tell you the number of times I've hit run when I've meant to hit roll, died, and it was just awesome. And well, and even aside from the characters, the world is a lot more colorful when compared to almost any game that I saw released in 2011. Like really
Right.
bright, rich saturation, especially when you first step out of the Well of Souls start to the game. Just stepping out into that field.
Right.
I mean,
And so let's talk about that then. And I understand if let's just sort of deal with reality. If you make a game based on reality, then you're going to get games that have a lot of browns and a lot of blues in it. Why? Because that's actually sort of the true colors. If you think about it, you go, okay, not including man-made colors, right? Let's suck out man-made colors. Then go, what is really kind of bright in the world? There isn't really much. There's flowers, and then there's some tropical fish. And that's about it. I got to tell you, that's about a couple fruits, but we'll put the fruits with the flowers. So there's not much. I mean, I know.
vegetation.
Yeah, God had a pretty good eye, but he wasn't. His palette wasn't overly colorful. So it's not till man comes along and they go, hey, let's make hot pink mini skirts and let's make neon lights and let's make canary yellow cars, right? And
Yeah.
everything starts to get bright around you. So what we knew was like none of those sort of quote unquote man-made colors were eh, alive 2,000 years ago. So we either could have made it look like Braveheart, and a couple games have decided to go that way, or
Uh-huh.
we just go to fantasy. Let's have some fantasy with this thing here, and let's do a little bit of sort of Hollywood, Broadway staging of some of the lights. Now, with that said, Sean, you can find dark caves if you want
Yeah.
dark, brown, monochromatic stuff. We got plenty of that, right? It was just we didn't want our bandwidth of color to be here. We wanted it to be so big that over here was going to be the dark dungeons and the castles and sort of the creepy stuff, if you like that and you like the monsters and the characters there. But if you want it, to be in the middle of the desert with the sun and it was 100 degrees out and there was like no cloud cover, we had that. We had everything in between. And when you came to certain cities in the middle where there were big castles, then yes, we wanted to do up dramatic lighting. Did somebody figure out dramatic lighting back then? I doubt it. But you know what? If you go to Disneyland and you go into Pirates of the Caribbean, you go to those rides at Disneyland and the indoor ones, it's all sort of dramatic and it makes it feel like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, or Mr. Toad is way more interesting because of all the lights that were there. And we said, let's just give a wide palette here. And again, it's an RPG, so if you don't like the colors over there, then stay away from them because there's a big sort of variety of them. Just go and run and play where you want to play, and if you want to experience all of it, you're going to get a lot of variety. And if you don't, then just stick in the colors that you like. There's plenty of that stuff.
And as a last follow up, I'm just curious about a lot of those visual interactive elements. I mean, simple things like look at how sparkly this flower is. You
Right.
should go over here and pay attention to me, like what's done with the chests when you need to loot. what were those sort of struggles like to try to incorporate those visual interactive elements and still stay true to the sort of palette of the world? Was there any, or was it?
Yeah. I mean, again, obviously there's a sort of an RPG visual language that goes with the
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
right? So we again, you don't want to get too cute and reinvent anything, because again, you're going to confuse the gamers. I would always say to people is like, just look at the world, see what's working, and if you can make it a little bit sexier, people will call you a genius, right? I wasn't the first guy to make plastic toys, but we won a bunch of awards just because we put them in different shapes. I mean, plastic is plastic that nobody cares, and the clay doesn't care what shape it is. It's the human hands that put it in there. And so, if you think about a guy like Steve Jobs, right? He looked at the world and he went, "Hey, you know what? There's like a billion of these things called a cell phone." And actually, what they do is you can actually text people and talk to people on phone and listen to people. I'm gonna make it a touch screen, right? I'm gonna make it a touch screen. Now now after he did that, it still just did the exact same thing. You could text, you could phone, you could listen. I mean, it was still a cell phone, but he made it. You touch it, so he didn't invent anything new. It was still a cell phone when it was done. He just made the experience slightly sexier, and all of a sudden he's a genius, right? So if any of you listening can figure out, look at what's around you already, and just do a better version of what's out there, I'm telling you, there's opportunities. I've made an entire career out of just polishing turds and just going, hey, look at. You know what? They've been around you the whole time. I just made them a little shinier than anybody else, and people go, "Wow, Todd!" I mean, look at we. I'll digress a little bit. We've won a lot of
Yeah,
awards
yeah.
for our sports toys, right? And they go, "Todd, oh my God!" They give you awards, and they say, well, "How did you make the toys look so realistic?" And then I hesitate, and then I usually give them the secret. And we use this tech. Maybe some of your viewers have heard about it. It's called a camera. And if you actually point a camera at something and click the button, it takes a picture of it. So the question isn't how did I make the people look like they look like after you use the camera to get a picture of them. The question is, how did the other companies for 50 years not make it look realistic? The question isn't how do I make it look realistic? It's how did they not make it look realistic? But God bless them for actually not doing it right. So sometimes you can score extra points, and
Yeah.
video game market is no different. Sometimes you can score extra points by just doing things that, in my mind, are kind of obvious things, right? I mean, somebody hits you to the left, don't you think you should fall to the left? If you're fighting somebody big, don't you think your sword should go up instead of down? I mean, I don't know. It seemed like sort of, simple things, and then you do it, and it's some of the things we're working on the MMO game too. That they're going, nobody's ever done that, and you go, what? So you hit a guy? No. They usually just jab you 3 times, Todd, and you get your power, you level up, and you move on. And nobody really cares about whether the action of the animation actually was meaningful. And for a guy like me, that's it's staggering to just go, well, hold a sec. We have to spend time doing this anyway. So, given that we got to spend 100 hours doing this move, just like anything else, might as well do it, kind of as cool and sexy and realistic as possible, or fun. Then do it bad. Might as well do a good job than a bad job. I never understood it, right? But again, people just sort of get in ruts and they just move on and they go, "This is how we've done it in the last 5 games." And I don't care. To some degree, I'm a comic book dude. I'm not following into that. We're going to sit there and we're going to look at this individually and go, again, what are they doing
Yeah.
wrong? That we can do, that we will get brownie points, hopefully, from the gamers, and they'll go, "Wow, those guys are big, huge games. They're geniuses for doing what I think other games should have been doing for the last 10 years."
Well, I will admit, I mean, even though you use the term polishing turds, it
Yeah.
totally sold for me. I think the game looks beautiful. I think all the animations and sound effects are delightful. And even though I am totally not an MMO gamer, I'm still really looking forward to Copernicus. So I'm excited to see it.
I'm telling you, there is some staggering animation in the MMO version. There's staggering animation. I mean, there's stuff because we use a different set of software, and the wireframes move differently. And again, you're sort of only as good as your tech, if you will, right? And it's not a button mashing game, if you will. So
Uh-huh.
there's different dynamics. Like in the RPG game, you never know when somebody's going to basically do a combo. But in the role playing or in the MMO game, you actually know when they're going to start and stop, so you can really get some beautiful, lush animation. Not only the big stuff,
Huh.
but you can get all the subtle stuff in there. I mean, there's some beautiful subtlety that's in there that isn't out in the marketplace right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always it's so funny, kind of like what you said, where if there's just a little subtlety thrown in there, you're just like, oh my gosh. I remember in Uncharted 3, when you just sort of walk by a wall, he just puts his hand on the wall. He just
Yeah.
sets it there. I mean, no, it doesn't even have an influence on the gameplay, really, but it's just that natural feel.
Well, we got like 6 foot chickens, and they're this thing sort of wiggles in here, and the feathers sort of bounce as they're doing it, and their bellies are sort of jiggling up in here. So there's all this sort of second and third animation that's going because why? Kind of fat chickens do that, right? You just go, wow. I mean, even some of our characters when they're running, their ears are sort of bounding and their hairs are sort of plopping a little bit. Again, their neck is going. Even when they're running, they're going like this. The animal, right? Have you ever seen a dog run fast?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He doesn't keep his mouth pursed like that.
Like
He,
exactly flat and even, like it's
right,
duct tape
right.
shut.
Yep, they'll run and just because of how hard they're running, there's their gravity sort of takes over, right? Boom. And again, if you can introduce the illusion of gravity into your game, then it just makes the characters seem more than just wireframes.
Todd, I cannot express again how excited it makes me even just to look harder in this game here. I want to thank you so much again for coming on. And by the way, I love all your comic books. Thank you
Oh,
for doing that. I really
well, we,
appreciate
we
it.
we appreciate it. If I can give you guys any teas, and EA ultimately will have the big say in whether there was enough games sold to get to a Reckoning 2. But whenever you create a new game, the learning curve goes like this, right? And at the end, it gets really steep because you start figuring everything out. It's no longer, how do we do this? Why do we want to do this? You actually start getting into that groove. So if we get lucky enough to do a Reckoning 2, I'm telling you, we ended the development of Reckoning 1 here, and with the tech that we can now bring in, and with the skill sets that we had at the end of that game, that's where we'll be starting. We'll be starting at that slant, and it's only going to get sort of steeper. So people go, Todd, can you? Are there things that you wish you could have put in that game? Yeah, but again, you sort of have to put some to the side. But I'm telling you, if you guys like this, then you just wait till you get to see what it is that I still got in my brain that we could still put in for a sequel or something like that. So spread the word, go and get some, and then we'll really open up the visual vault for you guys, each time we come back with another one. And plus, there's gonna be some cool downloadable stuff too.
Dude, Todd, thank you so much for coming on. It is an absolute delight to get the chance to actually talk to you one on one. And again, if you should open up the stream anytime in the near future, they're going absolutely ape shit. So really
Uh,
appreciate
all
everything you
right.
did for the game, and thank you so much.
No, we appreciate anybody sort of taking the time and spending their hard-earned money, on our projects. With really without the fans, being loyal and literally spending, money that they had to go work for, we're just self-indulging. So again, I'm always grateful for anybody that buys, anything that I do, and will continue to do so.
Well, thanks. I promise you, I have many more comic books on back order. Still haven't gotten to haunt.
Okay. Well, you go procreate, and I need a million more like you, and then I can retire.
Excellent. On it.
All right.
Thanks so much again. Cheers.
All right. You guys be good.
Guys, that's real life. That actually happened. Oh my gosh. It's one of those funny things where all the four people we've talked to today, Kurt, Ken, R.A., and Todd, you realize that it's not actually luck that gets you somewhere. You know what I mean? You hear them talk and you're like, God, he thinks smart things. Oh my gosh. The things that he thinks and says. and to hear him suggest to me that I need to procreate on the order of millions. Smartest. I'm on it. Next step. Oh my gosh. Now, I will say, traditionally, I would stop the stream right now because the event is done, but I'm not going to. I'm going to play for a little while longer. I do want to get a break because my water thing's empty. But thank you to everyone at 38 Studios, because for any of you who did not know, I was not paid to do this. This was not any requirement to say anything. I mean, if you watch Total Biscuit, he was pissed off about all sorts of stuff, you know. This was just me wanting to play this game. And as you note, I've been bringing people in and chatting the whole time, because that's kind of how I like to play games. And you know what 38 Studios did? They shoved awesomeness at us. Everything is amazing. So huge gratitude to them for helping support these little grassroots movements like this. I'm having a blast. And for the record, there's tons of stuff that they're giving away. It's over at reckoning.com/Day of Reckoning, which was today. So I think myself and several other streamers are just going to keep it up. And thank you so much for tuning in throughout the day. If you like 38 Studios, let them know that you think they're awesome. And if you enjoy the game, you can buy it. If you want to keep watching the game, just hang out here. Just hang out, because I'm going to go use the restroom. Oh, yeah.